Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Blazing Bishop Battles. I am the Blazing Bishop, aka Liam Murphy. Today we're going to be looking at a game between Hikaru Nakamura playing with the white pieces against Alireza Firouzja playing with the black pieces. Now many of you know Hikaru Nakamura. He's been an American chess player, dominating the American scene for a long time, done really well in tournaments, a top-ranked player in the world, and now a huge chess streamer, one of the biggest streamers out there. Alireza Firouzja, you may not know, he's a younger chess player, only about 18 years old, maybe he's a little younger, and he, started playing chess at the age of 9. Personally, I think he will challenge for world champion one day if that's what he wants to do. A very, very strong bullet chess player, blitz player, and rapid player. And now we're starting to see strong showings in classical chess from him. And so I think if he wants to focus on becoming world champion, the sky is the limit for him. I think we're going to see big things from Alireza Firouzja for the years to come. So let's jump into the game here. Now, I am analyzing a game between two super grandmasters. So I am not a grandmaster. I'll try my best here. But this was a rapid game played between them online only about last month. This was played on May 25th between these two in an online tournament. So Hikaru opens up with d4. Alireza Firouzja plays knight f6. Hikaru plays c4. And Alireza plays c5, the Benoni defense. Hikaru pushes forward with the d-pawn to d5. And here, Alireza plays b5. Now, this may be an unusual looking move if you're not used to this. This is called the Banco Gambit. And basically, black is trying to undermine white's center here, these extended pawns. If white captures this pawn, they're going to try to pile up on d5 perhaps. And the idea behind any gambit is you give something up, but you get something in return. So here, black is willing to give up this pawn, and they're hoping to get development in return for that pawn. So Hikaru accepts the gambit and captures the pawn, and Alireza's not done. He's playing a6. He would like for white to capture again, develop one of the pieces for black perhaps. Maybe the bishop captures back. And let's see, Hikaru fully accepts the gambit. So if we take a pause at this position, white is up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pawns. And black only has 6 pawns. However, black does have one piece developed. And white does not have any pieces developed. And Alireza does not take back the a pawn. More normal maybe taking with the bishop, taking with the knight, developing a piece. But Alireza plays g6, saying, I'm going to fianchetto my bishop and get my king castled. Hikaru develops his knight to c3, and Alireza plays bishop g7, preparing to castle. And white plays g3. Basically, black's in no concern to pick up this pawn right now, because it's going to be very, very difficult for white to hold on to it. Black can capture this pawn at any time, because they're attacking it 3 times. G3 is played by Hikaru, a more unusual looking move, but preparing to fianchetto their light squared bishop. Alireza castles. Hikaru continues developing his pieces, gets his knight into the game, hitting the center. And Alireza plays queen a5, both hitting the pawn again for a 4th time, and perhaps putting pressure on this knight with this bishop and queen coordinating on the knight. Here, Hikaru plays bishop d2, breaking the pin of the knight with the queen. And perhaps Alireza wanted to force this bishop to go here or tempt it to go here, making the case that the bishop does not belong on d2. It interferes with the queen from defending the pawn on d5, and it's worth the tempo to do this, is what Alireza is saying. Alireza is not worried about any discoveries from this knight, so they're not worried about knight e4, knight b5, obviously the queen would take, knight a4, not a concern. No great moves for the white knight to jump to take advantage of the bishop lined up with the queen. So Alireza simply plays d6, solidifies his pawn structure here and allows his bishop to develop on this side if he would like. Hikaru plays bishop g2, and Alireza plays knight d7, saying, I don't want my knight to capture on a6. My knight is not coming to c6, and from d7, perhaps I jump into e5, perhaps I come to b6. Hikaru castles, and Alireza plays knight b6. So he's investing a lot of turns into this knight, but notice that this position is closed. It's not a super open position right now with tons of open lines. And in closed positions, you can afford to maneuver your pieces a little bit more than you could in an open position where there's open files and diagonals on the board. Hikaru develops his queen to c2. And here Alireza finally picks up the pawn, deciding to capture with the queen, not the bishop, interestingly. Hikaru plays e4, defending the d5 pawn because it was attacked twice. And this could perhaps become a weakness in the future for white if black can take advantage of that. Notice, though, that this dark squared bishop for black has a super great future on this chessboard. Here, Alireza plays knight c4, taking the c4 square, an excellent square for his knight, and it could put pressure on b2 perhaps. You're hitting this bishop. You'd like to trade your knight for the bishop maybe. So really excellently placed knight. And if we just compare like this knight to white's knights, clearly the c4 knight is better than white's knights because it is further up the chessboard. Also is keen in on e5 here. White plays b3. Perhaps a mistake in the position by Hikaru. This knight is willing to capture this bishop, and that's what Alireza does. And after the knight captures back, the bishop is already hitting this knight, and it's lined up with this rook. So that's probably not looking great for white there. There could be some tactical problems, and Alireza wastes no time opening up the eyes of that bishop, allowing it to see the chessboard, hitting that knight. And here Hikaru plays a4. An unusual looking move. Not fully sure what the idea behind it is. Perhaps it's to jump the knight into b5. He would love to have his knight there, but notice the knight can't move right now because the bishop is lined up with the rook. Here, Alireza takes advantage of the fact that this knight can't move, hitting this knight twice now with the queen and bishop, and forcing white to play rook a to c1. Not a great future for the rook on this file, because it is super closed right now with this pawn protecting it. And finally, Alireza develops his last minor piece, bishop a6, with a tempo hitting this rook, really forcing white to make one of two moves. They either need to jump their knight into c4 to stop the bishop from seeing the rook on f1, or they need to jump this knight into b5. Both of them would give up a pawn. We'll look at why, but let's first show like why can't the rook just move. Something like rook e1 wouldn't quite work because black can come in with the move bishop d4, where this knight and bishop are coordinating on the f2 square, and the light squared bishop here prevents the rook from coming to e2 or f1 to defend f2. So instead, what Hikaru ends up playing is knight b5. Let's real quick look at why knight c4 also loses a pawn. Black would capture, the pawn could capture, and one way it could go, a couple different ways, is black can just take with the queen here, the queen takes, the bishop takes, the rook takes, and black's rook would pick up on a4 here, where this game is tied in material. However, black is the side with a knight in a closed position. White has a light squared bishop with his pawns on light colored squares, so it's a bad bishop. And black has these open files to invade white's position here. Instead, what happened in the game is the move knight b5, giving up a pawn on his own terms here. And black captures, giving up the bishop for the knight. Pawn captures back, and Alireza takes with the queen. So now we've reached a similar position where both sides now have 6 pawns. So black has gotten back those pawns. However, let's compare the pieces. Black's bishop is much better than white's bishop. So Alireza's bishop is king of this chessboard. The white bishop, again, is a bad bishop because the pawns are on light colored squares. And black also has this target, this B pawn. This B pawn is an isolated pawn because no other pawns can protect this pawn. So this is a target for black to team up on. They can do moves like rook a3, the rook to b8, putting pressure on this target and trying to eliminate this weakness from white's camp and go up material. It's not really clear where what white should do about this. They would like to target the e pawn. However, their own pawns are stopping white from ever seeing this pawn on a file. So it's much easier to play black's position here, in my opinion. White gives the knight a kick, where the knight happily jumps into this temporary outpost square on e5. Not a full outpost because white could give it a kick if they wanted. And white plays rook d1. Again, I don't see the future on this file for this rook. It seems like white just has to shuffle pieces here, where most of black's moves are making progress. Rook a3 is played, putting pressure on the b pawn and allowing this rook to double if that's what black wants to do. Bishop f1 is played, saying, okay, this bishop has no future on this diagonal. Let's get it into the game at least. Hit this queen. Here, Alireza plays queen b4, staying on the b file and making in contact with this pawn. And white would love to trade pieces here. Not only are their pieces all in their side of the camp, so they're all kind of cramped for space where they're taking squares that each other need, but black's kind of the one doing the attacking here, so they would love to get the queens off the board. Alireza, of course, does not want to trade queens, so he retreats his queens because he's the one doing the attacking, pushing the initiative here. And here Hikaru centralizes his queen. Rook a2 is played, getting the rook on the opponent's 7th rank, a super strong rook. And bishop e2 is played. Again, white's just kind of shuffling pieces here. This bishop does do a good job of offsetting this knight, though. And finally, Alireza gets his last piece into the game. Rook f to b8, putting more pressure on this b pawn. And king f1 is played by Hikaru. Again, not easy to come up with moves for white here. Kind of shuffling around. Knight d7 looks like black would like to reroute this knight or just open up the bishop. And knight f3 is played. Queen b4, again, more shuffling. And bishop c4. So if we compare these bishops again, this bishop, super strong chess piece, king of the chessboard. This bishop is a tall pawn, kind of sad, where it's doing a nice defensive job, but it doesn't see any squares on the opponent's side of the camp other than b5 and a6. Not the best piece in the world. Rook a8 is played by Alireza. A very logical, perhaps rook a3 would be played. Perhaps dropping the rooks on a1 is ideal one day. Hikaru plays queen d3 and rook b2. So Alireza can now double rooks on the opponent's 7th rank. We sometimes call these pigs because they can gobble up everything in their path. And again, they're putting more pressure on this b pawn. Hikaru plays rook to c2, trying to offset those rooks. And Alireza brings his other rook into the game, saying, go ahead, capture me. My other rook will take back. And that's what Hikaru does. He's happy to trade some pieces, get some pieces off the board. And then, again, just kind of shuffling around with this move. Rook e1. Rook a2 is played. Bishop b5. Just some more waiting moves from white hitting this knight. The knight jumps into e5. And Hikaru, again, happy to trade pieces here. He's the one kind of suffering from a lack of space and being attacked. The bishop takes back. You do not want to take back with the pawn and make the pawn get rid of your pawn chain that you have here. And so you take with the bishop. White does not want to be doing moves like f4 or anything like that, because then this bishop would happily jump into d4, where it's putting way too much pressure onto the king. So rook e2 is played, looking to trade pieces. And rook a1 check, taking control of white's 1st rank, forcing the king to g2. You can't play rook e1 there because black attacks that square twice. Queen a3 is played, shuffling the queen around, trying to invade white's camp here. Queen c2, some more. Again, it's really hard to come up with good moves for white. And Alireza plays rook to c1, hitting the queen with tempo, perhaps allowing the queen to drop into a1. Queen a2 is played. Again, white would love to trade pieces here. And Alireza, of course, says, no, we're not trading. Queen b4 is played. Bishop c4, just defending the weakness. Again, this piece is not a good chess piece compared to black's at all. And queen c3, again invading white's camp here. Rook e3 is played by Hikaru, and Alireza plays queen d4. So just trying to find, queen d1, black would love to get on the board, trying to threaten some checkmates. But bishop f1 is played by Hikaru, a defensive move you do not want to be making, where the king defends the bishop. And Alireza makes just a prophylactic move here with king g7, saying there will be no checks to my king. I'm going to put my king on the long diagonal where my bishop prevents any checks ever coming to my king. And so my king is super safe, and you don't have any good moves. And so Hikaru plays queen e2, stopping queen d1, because then the queens would be traded, and Alireza plays queen a1. So now Alireza has achieved this queen and rook battery on the first rank, where he is trying to checkmate white's king, firmly in control of this game. And white queen has to kind of stay on this diagonal, defending this bishop, doing a defensive job. It's not really what you want your queen to be doing. So that's what happens. Queen a6, looking for a trade of the queens. And Alireza says, no, thank you. No trading for me. Putting the king into a pin here. Bishop d4 is a threat on the board. White plays queen e2, again looking to trade. And now black says, okay, I don't need the first rank. Now I'm going to take the second rank battery. And Hikaru plays queen f3, no longer defending this bishop note, putting some pressure. At least he's seen squares and black's camp here. But now Alireza reroutes the queen to a1. I think he's coming back to c1 perhaps. And the bishop comes to d3. Rook to c1 is on the board. You cannot play bishop f1 now because it will be taken. What does white do to stop these checks and stop the queen and rook from attacking the king? Hikaru plays rook e2. Not really sure how that helps him, because rook h1 is played, threatening queen g1 will be a checkmate, and Hikaru has to play queen e3. So if you play queen g1, now the king can run to f3, and Alireza plays queen f1. King f3 is played by Hikaru, and tons of great moves for black here, but Alireza takes the pawn on h3 here, and Hikaru plays queen g5. Alireza plays rook d1, threatening moves like queen h1. What does white do? I don't see any great moves here. Rook e3 is tried, and Hikaru actually resigns the game here, and let's see why. If queen h1 is played and white plays king g4, well, chess kids, pause your clock. There's a mate in 2 there. I hope you pause your clock, and if you saw h5, give yourself a pat in the back. Notice the bishop is attacking these squares. This pawn attacks f5. The queen is attacking the h-file. The queen is attacking f3. So the only move is for white to sacrifice the queen, where the queen will capture for a dovetail mate-esque mate here. And if the king runs to the other direction, instead of going to g4, if the king comes to e2, well, black would first play bishop c3, cutting off the king from the d2 and d4 squares ever going there. And how do you stop queen f1? Well, you don't really, because white's best move here is queen e5, where you could just take with the pawn, and then they can try something like f4. It does not matter, because rook d2 is mate, queen f1 is mate. There is nothing white can do here. So a really excellently played rapid game by Alireza Firouzja. I myself am very excited to follow his chess career and see how he progresses. I would really love to see him participating in the candidates tournament one day. I hope you guys like this video. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps us out. And have a great rest of your day.